Good firing grip. Always a good firing grip. Finger high on the frame. Yep. And now this gun has a round in the chamber. We can probably confirm that. You see the bullet in there? They call this a thumb safety because you hit it with your thumb. When you see red, when it's down, the gun will fire when you press the trigger. When it's up, the gun is not supposed to fire when you press the trigger, but it might anyway, because safety is malfunction. Right. So don't rely on that. The 4 rules still apply. So you're going to put the red dot on something, lean forward a little bit, so kind of slightly leaning forward, not off balance, but your weight a little bit forward. Instead of leaning backwards away from the gun absolutely cannot hurt you. Like this. Yep, that looks pretty good. See the little gap there? Oh. So if you could just fill those gaps in, it'll be better for you. It doesn't matter with this gun, but a higher caliber gun, it might make a difference. Is that on it? Yeah. Okay. Press the thumb safety down. Now you can put your finger on the trigger and just very slowly increase pressure.
Can I shoot it?
Yeah, you can shoot it. Just go. There you go.
Did you ready to do a pull? This is my Grand Stallion of a car. Just get in. Do I want to give any insights on the documentary? So this documentary has taken years off my life, really, and Santiago's life too. It tells the story of me going to England, and basically I became famous overnight. I was playing volleyball. I had this silly little YouTube channel on the side, and I decided that it would be fun to have my friends come over and talk about, different relationship issues, feminism. And I would just bring over random people into my living room. Well, one day I look at my YouTube channel and my AdSense, like one of my videos just went crazy, like it blew up. And I'm just this random woman playing volleyball in England. So we're telling that story, and then we're telling the story about how we got demonetized, the Tate brothers got thrown in jail, Myron and Fresh got demonetized, and how whenever you talk about men's issues, they censor you, they silence you, and they ruin your life. Now we have Snow White. We have woke Snow White. Yay. Thank God. Alright guys, today we are at the Fox Valley Range, and I have my friend Andrew from Law of Self-Defense.
Hey, great to see you, Pearl.
Great to see you, and today we are going to learn how to legally defend yourself, or as they say, legally shoot somebody. Andrew is going to educate us on how to properly defend yourself so you don't go to jail.
Absolutely. Our tagline is, have a gun so you're hard to kill, know the law so you're hard to convict.
I've shot a gun once or twice in my life, so today's the 3rd time. I'm gonna try a couple guns today, and we're gonna see if I can shoot the target.
I'm sure she'll do just fine.
On your right hand side, what you have that's important is going to be maintenance stuff, cleaning, and then all the way to the wall on your right hand side would be magazines for your pistols. Follow me real quick. You go down here, if you're a fan of knives, you have
Hi guys. How are you, sir? Good. So I've shot quite a bit, but my friend here has not. Okay. Maybe not shot a handgun at all. She can't remember if she's ever shot a handgun. So she'd like to do a little bit of shooting. I'm wondering if you have a 22 with a dot on it. I think that might be the easiest thing for her to deal with.
I do have a 22 with a dot on it. I also have 22 with just regular iron sights, so I got you covered either way.
I'd like her to cheat first,
That's
just
fine.
to get comfortable with the shooting, and
That's what you wanna do?
we'll circle back to irons. And just in case we decide we want to move up from there, what do you have like in a 9 with a dot?
I got a 365 Legion that just walked out. They're going to be back shortly. What else? There's a Walther MVP right there. That might be it. We only had like 5 to begin with, and 3 of them I think out for cleaning.
Can I take a look at the Walther?
What's this guy here? It's basically just full size guns. But if she wants to hide it, she can.
My dad said I could have brought a rifle.
Yes, you could have.
There's no like bullets.
No, there's nothing else.
But you should
So,
you should
you should
pretend
always-
there are.
Yes, you should always pretend there are. If you look, when I opened it up, there's the barrel and the bullets on the
Oh, okay. I'm fine with this one.
Maybe one of these,
Oh, that's kind of cool.
because then we can just pick a specific thing to shoot at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if you want a space alien or one for fun, that's.
Okay, I'll do space alien.
How you doing? Oh, what's going on? Not too much. Come on. You all right?
Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
Do I look cool? Always wanted to look cool.
Glasses on before you go in.
Yep. Straight ahead, yeah.
One more door.
One more door. All right. Get even more private. VIP. Right. Bottle service.
Wow.
We haven't been able to figure that one out yet. But everything's push button.
I don't have my reading glasses on. Turn the intensity down just a little bit. So is that negative and this is positive?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Better?
Oh, that's nice. That's better. Too good a job. Okay. All right, so we have a semi-automatic. Most semi-automatic pistols, the whole slide goes back and forth. This one's a little different. It has a bolt on the inside here. So this is the part that moves back and forth
Okay.
instead of the top. That's pretty common in 22 caliber pistols. The way you grip a semi-automatic pistol is this part of your hand right here gets snugged up in this spot. Make sense?
Yeah.
Finger stays up here when you're not shooting off the trigger, and you wrap your fingers around like so. And where you really want there to be pressure is when this gun fires, it wants to rotate like this. So this spot wants to rotate backwards like that. This spot wants to rotate forwards and up. So where you really want to feel pressure is mostly in your pinky and the back of your hand here like this.
Okay.
And then when you shoot two-handed, you just take this hand, you align your thumbs, you fill in this curve here with this hand, and wrap your other fingers around. So both thumbs are pointing at the target, like you're shooting with your thumbs, and one hand just wraps around the other hand, and you don't have space here. You just fill it in like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I go like this.
Yep, and you want to kind of almost push it into the back of your hand so it's nice and snug. Before you put your second hand on, just so you want to have pressure here and pressure there. This gun doesn't recoil, so you don't have to worry about it, but the technique is the same for all handguns.
Oh, okay.
Is it big enough to do? Yeah, perfect.
I remember it was like this. Or...
Nope, this curve of this hand fits in this curve here.
Oh, I see. Like that. Right?
And then if you look through the glass here, you'll see a red dot.
Yeah.
That's your aiming point.
You mean a green dot? I
No.
see a green one.
Nope, then you're not. So if you may need to rotate it around a little bit.
Oh, I see. Oh. Yeah, okay, I see.
So today, everyone, the guy's talking about using the iron sights. The iron sights would be this thing on the front here.
Okay.
Everyone who's serious about handguns today has one of these on the gun. They have a dot on the gun. The gun I carry for personal protection every day has a dot on the gun. Pretty soon guns won't have iron sights anymore for
Why?
personal protection because these are just so much faster and more accurate.
Okay.
So when you're using sights, you have to line up the front sight with a little groove in the back sight. You have to line everything up. Then you have to shift your focus here. The target looks fuzzy. There's a lot going on. With the dot, all you do is you just put the dot what you want to hit.
Okay.
You don't really stare at the dot per se. You're staring. If you were shooting at this, you'd be staring at the cue, and the dot would just kind of happen to be there.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So take the gun again. Get that same grip.
Above, like this, and then this.
Get this nice and tight. You don't want any space here. Get that hand nice and
This
tight.
goes here,
Perfect.
right?
Yep. Second rule is you never point the muzzle at anything you're not willing to destroy. So if we were, I'm not going to do it here because they might get mad at me, but if I were holding this gun like this and moving around this space around you guys, I would always be pointing the gun in the direction away from you. Here at the range, this is always the safe direction. So if I wanted to turn to talk to Santiago, I would rotate my body
And not the gun.
and not the gun. Make sense? The third rule is never touch the trigger until you're ready to make a loud noise.
Okay.
So that's why I told you, when you grip the gun, your finger is up here, high on the frame. Part of that is because, say you were to trip or be surprised or shocked, we tend to clench our hands automatically when that happens. If your finger's up here and you clench your finger a little bit, it's no problem. If your finger is here and you clench your hand a little bit, you might hit the trigger, fire a shot when you don't intend to. When I can't see through the trigger guard, I know their finger is lazy. That's a concern. That tells me they don't know how to handle a gun. And finally, know your target and what's beyond your target. We're safe on a range here. Obviously, the safe backstop is provided to us. So, every gun's always loaded. Don't point it at anything you're not willing to destroy. Don't touch the trigger until you're ready to fire the gun. Know your target and what is beyond. Those are the 4 rules of gun safety. Now, the magazine. The bullets go in here, obviously. You can see the magazine is angled to align with the grip into which it's going to go. The forward part, obviously, is where the pointy end of the bullet is to be. Here's the bullet. Actually, this is a round. So a round has 4 components. It has the bullet, that's really just the tip part. So when people say bullet, they're really just talking about that little bit of lead at the end. The case is the brass portion. The gunpowder is a third part. And then there's a primer in the back that ignites the gunpowder. Here it's a rim fire, so there's not a separate component that you see. They make it very easy to load these magazines because there's a nice little peg here. So I'll let you do it, but you pull down on that peg to take a little the tension out of the spring, and then you just insert the round back end first, just like that.
Do you fill it all the way?
Yeah, we may as well fill it all the way. It probably holds 10. And now you have a gun with a loaded magazine in it. It still has an empty chamber. When we release this bolt, it's going to pick up a round from the magazine and load it into the chamber. At that point, the gun's ready to fire. Okay? There's 2 ways to do it. You can push this button down. That'll release the bolt to go forward. Or you can pull the bolt back and let it go. But don't baby it forward again. So if you pull it back, just open up your hand and let it go. Good firing grip, always a good firing grip, finger high on the frame. Yep. And now this gun has a round in the chamber. We can probably confirm that. You see the bullet in there? They call this a thumb safety because you hit it with your thumb. When you see red, when it's down, the gun will fire when you press the trigger. When it's up, the gun is not supposed to fire when you press the trigger, but it might anyway, because safety is malfunction.
Right.
So don't rely on that. The 4 rules still apply. You're going to put the red dot on something. Lean forward a little bit, so kind of slightly leaning forward, not off balance, but your weight a little bit forward. Instead of leaning backwards away from the gun absolutely cannot hurt you. Like this.
Like this?
Yep, that looks pretty good. See the little gap there?
Oh.
So if you could just fill those gaps in, it'll be better for you. It doesn't matter with this gun, but a higher caliber gun, it might make a difference. And are you comfortable? You picked a card, you put the dot on it?
Yeah, 9.
Okay. Now, press the thumb safety down. Now you can put your finger on the trigger and just very slowly increase pressure.
Can I see it?
Yeah, you can shoot it. There you go. What card did you aim at? That's pretty good. You hit the 9. So lean forward a little more. You're kind of leaning back.
You scare me a little bit, I won't lie to you. I'm gonna go for 8.
Across. So if you do 2 rows, you know you've got 10. Do you mind if I fire a couple shots just to check? We're all in the same group though, right? So it's the gun's accurate, but it's the sight, the dot's not properly aligned.
Oh, okay.
So if and we know that it's the sights and it's not the shooter because all my shots were in that same little group, right?
Oh,
So if
okay.
I had the adjustment tool, I would adjust the sight a little bit, raise it up a little bit at this distance. It's anxious about the gunshot, and as they're pressing the trigger, they push
Yeah,
the barrel
probably.
down, right?
Yeah.
What you want when you're shooting is you almost want it to be like a Zen-like experience. Like you don't know when the gun's going to go off. You're just slowly increasing pressure. The gun goes off, and it's actually a surprise. But when you do that correctly, you don't drive the gun down.
That I think.
Yep, it's down. You can always rest your thumb on it if you want to make sure it's down.
And then I'm gonna.
Pick a spot, lean forward a little bit. You have a bad habit of leaning backwards.
Yeah.
You want to lean forward. You want to dominate that muzzle.
We go for the choke.
That's really good. You were shooting at the jack, I presume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just to put this in context, right? You've never shot a handgun before. If this was a bad dude, all those bullets would have hit him in the heart,
Yeah.
right? Those are all stop shots.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard to shoot a gun for self-defense purposes. Now, if you were in a match, you'd literally be trying to put every one of these bullets into the same hole. So when I shot this round as a kid, I was using a rifle, small bore rifle competitor. The bullseye, the 10 ring, was the same diameter as the bullet. And you were trying to put every single bullet through that same hole every time. You don't need that level of precision for self-defense. The heart and the important vessels coming out of it are about the size of a fist. If you can hit a fist, and this is self-defense range, right? You're telling this guy, I was going to curse, stay the heck back. I'm ready to defend myself. And if he doesn't, you could put this entire magazine into that space.
Right.
So that's why, some people will advocate, learn martial arts, learn other things, and I think that's great. I do martial arts too. But if you're a typical woman who's going to be much smaller and weaker than the man who's probably attacking her, you would need 20 years of martial arts to be equal, given his disparity of size and strength.
So I was thinking of that woman that her trial's going right now, where she got attacked on a run by an illegal immigrant.
Right, he killed her.
Yeah, he killed her. Do you think, is there a way to safely bring guns when you're working out and run it? Because I see that a lot where women get taken on runs or athletic
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff.
So you can have I have a fanny pack that I use when I'm traveling on my motorcycle because I don't like to wear it on the bike in case I crash. I don't want a big piece of metal on my body. But there's all kinds now of jogging. It's like a elastic strap you can wear around your midsection. Put a little compact gun in there and just pull your shirt over it. Nobody knows you have it. But if you need it, the gun is there in less than a second. And George Zimmerman grabs it first, fires one shot. When the police got there 2 minutes later. Because remember, George was on the phone telling them to send a cop earlier, right? So the police arrive almost right after the shot's fired. And they took a photo of George Zimmerman at the scene. His face is bloody. The back of his head, where it was pounded into cement, is bloody. His nose is sideways on his face. Okay? These are the kind of tricks they pull. When you see this, you're like, holy, that guy got the crap beat out of him. When the prosecution is obliged to send that photo to the defense, it's part of discovery, they sent the defense a black and white version of the photo, so you couldn't see the blood.
I can't believe that's what happened.
Yeah. And we know Trayvon Martin was mounted on him because we have eyewitness testimony. George Zimmerman was screaming for his life, so people were looking off their balconies, and there was an eyewitness right there in the trial. Yep, no, that was Trayvon Martin mounted on top of him, beating the crap out of him. Ground and pound style.
These race hustlers have to be such bad people because
they're evil.
That's terrible. Oh my God.
And every picture you saw in the news of Trayvon Martin was him as a cute little 13-year-old.
What was the one that was like, I'm getting the cases confused because I think I was a teenager when a lot of these happened. So I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. But there was one where someone went into a house and like, I just remember I saw it on, like they thought the kid was breaking in and I guess he was drunk. But I'm questioning if maybe he wasn't drunk and he was breaking in because it was a race thing too.
So there was one, I'm blanking on her name. It happened in Detroit. Theodore Wafer was the defendant. Theodore Wafer. He lived in Detroit, a very bad part of Detroit, as if there's a good part. A white guy. He's in his home. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's sleeping on a Barker lounger in his living room. And he hears someone banging on his front door. Like super hard. And he thinks he's the victim of a home invasion. Lots of home invasions in this community. So he's got a shotgun, a pistol grip shotgun. There's no shoulder stock. It's just a pistol grip and the shotgun. He grabs that. He walks up to his front door where the banging is happening. And he opens up his front door. There's a screen on the other side. But he opens up his front door to look outside. And he's holding the shotgun by the pistol grip. And a shape lunges like sideways across the frame of the door. And he fires the shotgun. Turns out it was a young black woman who was extremely drunk, thought she was at a house where a party was supposed to be happening, and they were not letting her into the house as a prank. So she's banging on the door to get into the house.
The one I'm thinking of, he was upstairs and the person was downstairs, and he shot him from upstairs. I can't remember what it was. I just remember watching it on TV. Like that was the only one. It was like, but I could see in these situations that they would fake it. Like like maybe he wasn't drunk, he was breaking in. Like because they keep manipulating all the facts of these cases.
Yeah, right. So they always cast it in that light. With Trayvon Martin, they said, why was Trayvon Martin killed? Why did George Zimmerman call the police? Because he was a young black man walking around with iced tea and candy. That's why. Is that why? Or is it because he had burglar tools on him and he was peering in people's windows in the rain? Hey, Pearl.
Hello.
This is pretty amazing.
What do you think?
I think it's really fancy.
Yes, you get to sit right there.
Oh, nice.
Welcome to the...
Very nice.
So I don't want you to get too excited, but you are our first in-studio guest.
Right, of course.
In the new studio, so I think we've upgraded from the OnlyFans women in London. Forget, I don't care.
Oh yeah, that was a hotel room. Alrighty.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2.
What up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Pearl Daily. Welcome to the show. Today I have a special guest on the show, our first ever in studio guest. Welcome to the show, Andrew Branca.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
He is the country's leading expert in self-defense law with over 25 years of experience, and you have the YouTube channel Law of Self-Defense.
I do. More than 30 years of experience. I keep getting older every year.
And you are the author
of our best-selling book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles, which, by the way, we give away for free at lawofselfdefense.com/free book.
And so you teach men and women how to legally shoot somebody.
That's one way of putting it. I prefer to say that I teach people where the legal boundaries are for the use of force. So they do have to defend themselves. They're not only well positioned to win the physical fight, which is the most important thing, but they're also well positioned to win the legal fight that happens. You don't want to survive the physical fight only to spend the rest of your life in a cage someplace. You want to be free to live your life with your family and all the things that make life worth living.
And so what's interesting, because guys, we went shooting today. So we went shooting, and I've spent kind of the day hanging out with Andrew. And you said something earlier about many people get convicted even though they're innocent or they didn't do anything on the books wrong.
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, part of it is just noise in the system. So specifically in this context, we're talking about good guy cases of self-defense, right? Not criminals just making up self-defense, but someone's had to defend themselves against some kind of attack. They don't really know where the legal boundaries are. They may think they know, but in fact, they generally don't know what they're allowed and not allowed to do. And the system itself is not well suited to deal with good guy cases of self-defense. By the system, I mean the criminal justice system.
Right.
When you think of that phrase, criminal justice system, the most controlling word in that three-word phrase is system. It is a system. It's a machine, like a steampunk era machine with giant wheels and gears. It doesn't care about you personally. It doesn't care about fairness. It's just a bureaucratic machine for administering what we call justice, the rules of law to different people. And the second most operative term in that phrase, criminal justice system, is criminal. It's a system that's optimized to deal with criminals. For them, it does a pretty good job. But when you feed a normal law-abiding person into that system, it generally doesn't go very well. And because the system's optimized for dealing with criminals, there's at least always a 10% chance that you'll get convicted if I have to put you in front of a jury. That's what we call the justice part of the criminal justice system.
10%, that seems so high.
It's low. Many criminal defense attorneys will tell you it's higher because most criminal defense attorneys, their clients are actually criminals. That's the nature of the business. For someone who has a criminal history who's put in front of a jury, they could be completely innocent of this particular charge. They're looking at more like a 50% chance of conviction. So the most common criminal charge we're defending against is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Okay. We do murder cases, we do all level of cases, but the most common is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon because what happens is the client was facing something scary, frightening them, and they're carrying a gun, legally carrying a gun, and they pulled their gun out and they pointed it at that person and they said, "Stay back, I'm prepared to defend myself," which sounds like perfect self-defense, right? That same conduct checks all the boxes for a criminal charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. What is assault? It's putting someone else in fear of harm. But what are you doing when you're pointing a gun at someone? You're putting them in fear of harm. You're telling them, I will hurt you if you don't stop doing what's scaring me. It's aggravated because you're threatening them with deadly force harm, and it's with a deadly weapon because you're doing it with a gun. Collectively, in most states, that's good. That's a felony, good for 10 to 20 years in prison. Keep in mind, I'm talking about mothers, fathers, people who've never been in trouble with the law a day in their lives, are now looking at a 20-year felony sentence. So we're pretty good at what we do. The cases that really trouble me is the ones where I actually see innocent people being convicted and going to prison, and they tend to be many of the high-profile, politically energized cases out there. The George Zimmerman case, the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Now, those two guys happened to get acquitted, but they were at risk of conviction. They would have spent the rest of their lives in jail. Derek Chauvin is another case.
Yeah.
There was reasonable doubt in that case, but he got convicted anyway, and he'll die in prison.
Can you tell me what the media said about it and what actually happened?
Sure. So the way it was portrayed in the media was that George Zimmerman was a white Latino, a phrase invented for his trial.
A white Latino.
A white Latino. He was some kind of pseudo-white supremacist who saw a 13-year-old black boy walking through his community and decided to kill him and shot him dead for the crime of that boy walking around minding his own business with iced tea and candy. What actually happened was George Zimmerman was a neighborhood watch volunteer for his community that was beset by a tidal wave of home invasions and burglaries and thefts. He saw Trayvon Martin, who was not 13 years old, but it was a 17-year-old, well-muscled high school football player.
Wait, he was 17?
17.
Okay, keep going.
Trayvon Martin was a street fighter. In other words, he engaged in fights in the street as entertainment. We know this because we have video of him fighting on his own cell phone. His chosen technique was to punch people in the face, knock them down, and then mount them and beat them into the ground. Well, Trayvon Martin saw that George Zimmerman was on the phone with police reporting a suspicious character, Trayvon Martin. So he ambushed George Zimmerman, punched him in the face, knocked him down, mounted him, was beating him into the ground, smashing his head into a sidewalk. There's eyewitness testimony for all of this. And in the last desperate moment to save his life, George Zimmerman drew his legally carried pistol, fired a single round that killed Trayvon Martin in lawful self-defense.
And then there was all these riots and they made it politically motivated. But somehow Zimmerman still got off, like he got acquitted, right?
Yeah, when I first looked at the case, I thought, well, surely there must be something from the prosecution here that would suggest guilt, because everything I'm seeing is totally consistent with lawful self-defense. And there simply wasn't anything. But what was happening was it became an opportunity for a local prosecutor who was having difficulty getting reelected in her Black community. She had prosecuted a couple of cases involving Black people that were very unpopular in the community. She was going to lose her reelection. And then she saw the opportunity with George Zimmerman and said, you know what? If I prosecute this guy for shooting that Black high school student, I'll be in favor with the Black community again. Now, George Zimmerman was acquitted. So that prosecutor lost that trial if you define winning as getting a conviction. She didn't get a conviction. But if you properly understand what motivated her, it was not to get a conviction. It was to get reelected. And that worked. When she was going to lose reelection, she prosecuted Zimmerman and she got reelected instead of losing.
So that's how politics get involved in the law, because the prosecutors are elected.
Right.
Right. And so then they have to be political.
That's correct. So, in fact, the prosecutor in George Zimmerman's area, he was pressured to bring charges against George Zimmerman, and he quit. He resigned his job rather than prosecute George Zimmerman. So the prosecutor who ended up taking the case was from a completely different part of Florida, who flew in to take over that case for political advantage.
How can they do that? Because isn't it based on where you are?
But once the original prosecutor quit, it left a vacuum. He needed to be replaced by somebody, and she raised her hand and got picked by the governor.
Oh, so the governor appointed her to go do it?
Essentially assigned her to go into that empty district and take over the prosecutor's role.
And because they made it like a race issue,
right?
Then the facts didn't even matter.
Right. So there's a cliche in the law, and it says, if you're a lawyer and the law is on your side, you argue the law to the jury. And if the facts are on your side, you argue the facts to the jury. And if neither the law nor the facts are on your side, you pound the table. And so that whole prosecution was table pounding. The facts were not on their side. The law was not on their side. It was the cleanest case of self-defense I've ever seen brought to trial. Their prospects of actually getting a conviction was shockingly low, probably just that 10% that's noise in the system. So I don't think they really had an expectation of getting a conviction, although it could, of course, happen. The whole point was for her to win re-election. And in that respect, she won.
What do you think about like false accusations? And how can, I don't know, I know it's a little bit off of self-defense, but
no, it's fine.
How can men protect themselves from false accusations?
Well, you really can't, except to not associate with people who might bring false accusations. There's crazy people out there. Don't be in their company. Don't date them. Don't marry them. In terms of what I think should happen to people who make false accusations, and we need to be careful because sometimes someone may make a claim that they believe is true, but they just have the wrong person, right? It looks like the person who attacked them, for example. That's obviously not the case if we're talking about people in a relationship who know each other well.
Right.
But I think that if anybody makes a false accusation about anything, let's use a woman making she knows it's a false accusation of rape against a man, and she's caught, and it's proven she did that beyond a reasonable doubt, she should serve whatever prison sentence that man would have served if her accusation had been believed.
What about Kyle Rittenhouse?
Another case that there was literally zero evidence inconsistent with self-defense. And that's important to keep in mind because you don't have to prove you acted in self-defense. The state has to prove you did not act in self-defense. And they have to prove that beyond any reasonable doubt. So by like 90% of the evidence, they have to disprove your claim as self-defense. Well, if 100% of the evidence is favorable to self-defense, there's no way they can get a conviction on the legal merits there. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't shoot anybody who was not actively trying to kill him in the moment he shot that person. Right. Every single one of those uses of force was completely lawful. The prosecution had nothing to go on the law and on the facts. So what did they do? They pounded the table. They made a bunch of smoke and mirrors. They complained about him carrying a rifle in the first place. Sorry, that was completely lawful under the circumstances. They just shout about a lot of things, but there was nothing there in the merits. So Kyle Rittenhouse got lucky. He could have been convicted too. It would have been a wrongful conviction, but it could have happened. Thankfully, the jury came back with the right verdict.
So do you think all of these cases are disincentivizing men from stepping up in situations where they hypothetically could? So, Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm fairly certain he actually went there to help.
He went there to help?
Yeah, so he went there to help.
Medical training. He brought his first aid kit.
Yeah.
He was treating people's cuts and abrasions and things like that.
And, for, I don't know how long the trial was, but he probably had to put his life on hold. He probably had death threats,
Right. So even when these people are acquitted, like George Zimmerman or Kyle Rittenhouse,
Right.
so they won, right? They're acquitted. They walk out of the courtroom a free man. They were at risk of conviction. The trials go on for weeks. And in the case of Zimmerman, it was like a year between the event and the trial. So think about it. If you're like a 25-year-old guy, you're married, you're going to school, you're working a job, and this happens. And now your lawyer tells you, listen, in a year from now, we're going to go to trial and they're going to decide whether you spend the rest of your life in a cage. What do you do during that year? You still go get your 10 credits that year at the community college? Do you start a family? Do you have a child? Do you do anything substantive? Your life is frozen for that year, and you never get that year back. So even if you have the best possible outcome and you get acquitted, you lost that year of your life forever. In the case of George Zimmerman, he lost everything. He lost his job. He lost his wife. He lost, in a sense,
his wife left him?
His wife divorced him.
No way.
And I didn't know George at the time of the trial, but I've come to know George since then. He's just a genuinely nice guy, but he was traumatized. So you hear about George after the trial, after the acquittal. Sometimes you'd see him in the news. He did something crazy. Well, he was a broken man.
Right.
He had PTSD from that experience. He wanted to be a prosecutor himself. That's what he was going to school for. And so in his own mind, he's the good guy, right? He wants to be a good guy in society, keep society safe from evil predators. And the system tried to put him in a cage for the rest of his life for doing nothing wrong. And how long do you think George Zimmerman would have survived in general population in a Florida prison? Had he been convicted of being a racist murderer of a 13-year-old black boy for having iced tea and candy? Weeks? Maybe. Breonna Taylor kind of falls into the category of what I call bad outcome cases, meaning you can imagine a shooting that might occur where the person who was killed really deserved it, really had it coming. They were firing bullets at the police and the police were shooting back and they just got killed in a gunfight. That's not really what happened with Breonna Taylor. She was in an apartment with her boyfriend. The apartment was served with a search warrant by the police. They were doing a drug raid, essentially. The police kicked in the door, as the search warrant allowed them to do. And when they came in, Breonna's boyfriend started shooting at the police. He would later say that he thought he was being the victim of a home invasion, which could be true. Maybe he did believe that. In which case, it can be lawful to shoot at the police. If you don't know they're police, if you think they're home invaders, you're just defending your home. But of course, when you shoot at the police, they tend to shoot back. And the police did shoot back, and one of those rounds struck and killed Breonna Taylor. Was she trying to harm the police? No. Did the police have a reasonable expectation that the person they were serving the warrant on was trying to kill them? Yes. So their shots fired in her direction at the source of the gun shooting at them was a lawful use of force. She just got caught in the crossfire. So it's not a good death. I mean, nobody wanted her to die. But a lot of times you have these cases where it's technically a legal killing under the law, even though everybody involved wish it had never happened. Two people could be involved in a fight and they both legitimately think they're acting in self-defense. This happens a lot with police on police shootings, where they
Police
each
on
mistake
police?
the other, especially if they're in plain clothes. They're both in plain clothes. They're being told, hey, go find a guy who's walking around with a gun. And they turn a corner and there's a guy with a gun. It's another cop. And they shoot at each other. One of them kills the other. Under the law, the law of self-defense doesn't really care about what was actually happening. It's all about what was your reasonable perception when you fired that shot. And if you had a reasonable perception that you were facing an imminent deadly force threat, you can use deadly force in self-defense. You're not required to be correct in that assessment. We're not required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. We're only required to make reasonable decisions in self-defense. Mistakes are allowed as long as the mistakes are reasonable mistakes.
When you're in a situation where you have to use self-defense, like Zimmerman or any of these, the guy on the subway, Daniel Penny. Yeah. When they're in those situations, what is the best way to protect themselves?
Well, of course, there's two fights we're talking about, right? There's the physical fight. You have to win the physical fight or nothing else really matters, right? If you lose the physical fight, who cares about the legal stuff?
Right.
And that really involves what I would call tactical decisions. Like, do you have a gun? Do you have a knife? Do you know how to use them? Do you do some martial art like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? If you don't train for the physical fight, you're going to lose the physical fight. If people don't win because they're going to go, I don't know, crazy mode or something. That's not reality. You don't rise to your aspirations or your imaginary capabilities. Your performance is going to be what you can demonstrate cold on any given day at a range or in a dojo or wherever you prepare for the physical fight. So I would encourage people to do that, prepare for the physical fight. I know personally, I carry a gun every day of my adult life for personal protection. I do BJJ several times a week so I can have a non-gun answer to problems, a barehanded answer, to maintain that proficiency myself. So first, you got to do what needs to be done to win the physical fight. The next question is, what can you do to win the legal fight? You want great legal counsel, for sure. And most lawyers are not particularly good. Like any profession, lawyers aren't a bell curve. 80% of them are in the middle. They're okay. 10% of them suck. 10% of them are really good. You want one of the 10% that's really good. But even having done that, it's important to keep in mind that your lawyer is not a magician. He can't turn a bad shoot into a good shoot. Your lawyer is stuck with the facts you give him. If you give him good facts, you'll have a great defense. In fact, you can make yourself super hard to convict. That's what we teach at Law of Self-Defense, is how to be hard to convict. But if you give your lawyer bad facts, that's going to be a really, really difficult case to have a good outcome in.
Bad facts?
Bad facts. So what did you do? Was your conduct actually within the legal boundaries of self-defense? If it was, you're hard to convict. But your lawyer can't change that retroactively. You have to have made the right decisions in the moment when you were defending yourself. How do you know what those right decisions are? Well, with stuff like this. Learn the actual law of self-defense. If you do that and you stay well within the legal boundaries, you're really difficult to convict, and you're unlikely, because you're hard to convict, to be charged in the first place.
If it's a political ploy, does it matter?
Yes and no. So having made the right decisions will not keep you from going to trial if it's a politically energized case. You're going to go. But George Zimmerman went to trial, and Kyle Rittenhouse went to trial, and they got acquitted. They got acquitted because their use of force was inside the legal boundaries. So is it still important to know the legal boundaries and stay within them in a politically charged case? Yeah, because if you don't do that, your conviction's easy. You're done.
Out and being our first in-person. It's a nice studio,
Is there
right?
a prize? Do I get like a #1 medallion or something?
No, maybe we'll. We could have like someday we could have like a wall signing or something for people that come. I don't know, but all right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please make sure you like the video and subscribe on your way out. And also, if you guys want to see me, imagine that I could interview Chauvin or some of these guys that the whole media is against, but Pearl. The only way I can do that is if I have a lot of you on theaudacitynetwork.com. So please go there, like the video on your way out, and subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, and I will see you next time.
All right. Was that okay?
Yeah, that was good.
I am a member of the Audacity Network, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
I don't listen, though. I never have time to actually listen, but
I'm sure you don't. Your streams, when you go, you're going for hours.
verbal threats, that's all evidence from which you're evaluating that you're facing a threat.
Exactly.
Someone coming through your door is the same kind of evidence. You're not imagining someone's coming through your door. The door's being broken in.
Right.
So you have a reasonable perception of that threat happening.
And that reasonable doubt has to translate to the jury as well. They have to figure, oh, well, what would I do in that particular case as well?
Yeah, a good way to think about reasonable doubt is something like 90% of the evidence. So, for example, the jury could decide, you know what, I think it's more likely than not, this was not self-defense. It's 60% not self-defense. That's still an acquittal, because beyond a reasonable doubt requires 90%. 60% is not enough.
Right.
Unfortunately, what happens in a lot of cases is the jury's not told this. This is not explained to them until the end of the trial. And if you only wait until the end of the trial, by the end of the trial, the jury's already made up their minds what they think the verdict is. Properly, this should be told to the jury at the beginning of the trial, so every piece of evidence they're hearing is getting filtered through that. But a lot of criminal defense attorneys miss that step, and it really screws their clients.